Why was she still sitting in the corner, letting the laughter sting without reply? 12 shots, 12 misses, and not one of those young men had noticed the quiet woman who'd been there all along. The range officer's sarcasm carried across the Montana air like a slap. Any snipers here? They laughed. Of course they did. That's what men did when pride hid their shame. Lily Jackson set her cup down without a sound. The chipped mug left a faint ring of coffee on the bench. Her eyes followed the long stretch of earth, the sharp ridges cutting into a pewter sky. And in that moment, she knew what would happen next. She hadn't come to be noticed, but silence only carried you so far. 3 hours earlier, the gravel had crackled beneath her tires as she pulled into the Mountain View shooting range. The same drive she made every Tuesday, the same battered truck, the same quiet prayer that this time she'd be left alone. The Flathead Mountains loomed in the distance, cold and unyielding, their peaks brushed with early snow. She had learned long ago that mountains don't care about the burdens you carry. They simply stand, watching, waiting. She parked beneath a cluster of pines where shadows kept her from notice. From the rearview mirror, her reflection stared back, hair pulled back into a no-nonsense ponytail, circles under her eyes from another restless night. At 28, she looked older than she should, worn by years she would never fully speak about. She opened the glove box and touched the worn leather strap of her grandfather's rifle case. The familiar weight steadied her breathing. Her grandfather's words lingered like a ghost. A rifle isn't a weapon, little bird. It's responsibility made manifest. She whispered the line under her breath, a ritual she carried each time she came here. "Morning, Lily." The gruff voice broke her thoughts. Pete Garrison, gray beard, weathered ball cap pulled low, a man who'd seen more than most would ever admit. He ran this place, kept it clean, kept it fair. He respected quiet shooters. He respected pain that showed itself in silence. "Cold enough for you?" Pete asked, his boots crunching frost as he walked past. "Just right," she answered, and it was the truth. Cold kept her steady. Cold reminded her she was alive. But not everyone here came for that kind of solace. The new SUV pulled up with all the arrogance money could buy. Out spilled 3 young men, Derek Manning, blonde, smug, carrying rifles that cost more than most families' rent. Sam Porter, smaller, nervous, hiding behind expensive gear. Brad Collins, broad and clumsy, struggling with cases he could barely lift. Their laughter rang out before they even set foot on the line. Derek's voice rose above the others, bragging about his father's Remington, about his family's lodges, about shots he'd almost made. His camouflage looked store-bought, pressed that morning, not yet touched by sweat or dirt. Lily walked past them, carrying nothing flashy. Just the old rifle case, wood-worn smooth by decades of use. "Excuse me, miss," Derek called, his tone dipped in mock politeness. "Are you here for the beginner safety course?" Sam shot him a look, embarrassed, but Derek pressed on, smirking. "My buddy here could use company in the remedial class, or maybe Pete's got a ladies' day special." Lily stopped. She met his eyes, steady, silent, a look that once had frozen armed men in the Hindu Kush. "I'll manage," she said softly, then walked on. Inside, Joyce Garrison, Pete's wife, offered her a warm smile from behind the counter. "Your usual lane, honey." "Please." The sign-in sheet bore her name in neat military handwriting. No flourish, no hesitation, just order. Lane 15, the farthest from the noise, always the farthest. She unpacked her grandfather's rifle with the reverence of a surgeon unwrapping instruments. The world outside fell away as her hands moved with practiced ritual. Check the scope, check the stock, test the bolt. It was never about power. It was about control. Around her, the noise built. The college boys laughed and shouted, missing more often than they hit. Derek cursed his scope, cursed the range, cursed everything but himself. Sam shot better, quieter, hitting targets his friend couldn't. Brad just tried to keep up. Pete noticed everything. His eyes narrowed as Derek flinched, jerked the trigger, held his breath too long. Rookie mistakes wrapped in arrogance, but Pete let it go. Young men didn't listen when told. They only learned when humbled. An hour passed. Shots cracked across the lanes. Paper targets tore. Lily's breathing slowed into rhythm, the world shrinking to crosshairs, pressure, recoil, silence. Then came the voice Pete, over the loudspeaker. Range is hot. Eye and ear protection mandatory. Max distance today is 1,000 yards. Derek scoffed loud enough for all to hear. 1,000. My grandfather could do that with iron sights. The others laughed. Pete said nothing. Some lessons teach themselves. By mid-afternoon, the misses stacked up. 12 shooters had failed at distance. Derek grew red, snapping at Sam, demanding to use Gray's Garand, muttering about sabotage. That's when Pete said it, voice tired, voice sharp. Any snipers here? Because nobody else seems able to hit the broad side of a barn today. It was rhetorical, just venting. But Lily set her cup down. The scrape of ceramic on concrete silenced the room. She rose, jeans, flannel, boots, nothing special. But the way she moved, deliberate, controlled, like a storm that didn't need thunder to be known. I'll give it a try, she said, her voice steady, carrying across the range like a challenge and a promise. Every eye turned. Derek laughed, a nervous edge under the sound. You're joking, right? Lady, even I can't hit at those conditions. Maybe stick to the closer targets. She ignored him, walked to the rack, ran her hand along the rifles, not admiring, assessing. Tools, not toys. She chose a Remington 700, checked the bolt, the scope, balanced it against her shoulder. I'll adjust, she said simply when warned it wasn't zeroed. Pete hesitated. What distance you thinking? Her eyes stayed on the ridgeline gray sky bleeding into it. 4,000 meters. The words hung heavy. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Brad whispered, That's 2.5 miles. Derek's laugh faltered, That's impossible. But Lily's hands were already moving, steady, unhurried. Like she'd done this before. Like the impossible wasn't new to her at all. Pete drove the cone out, the orange dot barely visible on the ridge. Word spread. People gathered. Phones came out. Veterans drifted in, curious, cautious. Dr. Gray set up his spotting scope, his hands steady but his eyes sharp. You sure about this, Miss Lily? Juan Ramirez asked, voice low, protective. I'm sure. She lay prone, cheek pressed to the stock, breathing slow. The chatter around her blurred into nothing. Wind moved through grass, through trees. She watched it, read it, calculated. Her heart slowed. Her finger found the trigger. Breathe in, half out, hold. The crosshairs steadied. The trigger broke. Silence. 2.5 seconds of eternity. Then dust, movement, the orange cone tilting sideways. Dr. Gray's voice cracked through the quiet. Impact, dead center, she hit it. The range erupted. Gasps, shouts, disbelief. Phones lifted higher. Derek's face drained of color. Sam's mouth fell open. Brad fumbled with his camera. Pete's voice came through the radio, shaky for the first time in years. Dead center hit. Took a chunk out the middle. I'm holding the fragment in my hand. The noise swelled around her, but Lily only worked the bolt, catching the brass in her hand before it fell. She turned it once in her palm, pocketed it, quiet as before. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Juan whispered. Here and there, she said softly. Derek stumbled forward, pride stripped raw. That was impossible. No one does that without. His voice faltered. Military training. He didn't say it, but everyone heard it. Lily began cleaning the rifle, methodical, detached, like she hadn't just rewritten what these people thought possible. And for a moment, the entire range watched her, not as the quiet farm girl, not as the stranger in faded jeans, but as someone else entirely. Someone whose silence carried stories they weren't ready to hear. Why did she walk away from the applause, as if it meant nothing? The crowd buzzed like a hive, but Lily Jackson packed her things with the calm of someone folding away secrets. Her hands didn't tremble, her eyes didn't shine with pride, and that unsettled people more than the shot itself. She had given them something extraordinary, but taken nothing back. Pete came hustling from the ridge, holding the tilted cone like it was a trophy. 15 years I've run this range, he muttered, half to himself, half to the crowd, and I've never seen anything like that. Never. But Lily didn't wait for praise. The brass was already in her pocket, the rifle back on the rack. She shouldered her bag. The show was over for her at least. Dr. Gray stepped into her path. His voice carried weight not from authority but from knowing. That level of skill comes with costs, he said gently. You and I need to talk, not now, not here, but soon. She met his gaze. For just a flicker, something passed through her eyes, regret perhaps. Then it was gone, replaced by the same guarded calm. Maybe. The crowd pressed closer, some with admiration, some with suspicion. Which unit did you serve with? A voice asked. Carl Foster, ex-Marine hardware store owner, his tone respectful but probing. Lily's jaw tightened. She placed the rifle back with controlled precision. I need to get home, chores don't wait. The moment broke, but whispers followed her as she walked out into the November twilight. The road home cut through meadows stiff with frost. Her tires crunched gravel as fields rolled past, silver in the dying light. Ahead, the small ranch house glowed warm against the cold Montana dusk. Her grandmother stood waiting on the porch, mug of coffee in hand, back straight despite her 65 years. Vera Jackson didn't waste words. She didn't need to. Her presence alone carried expectation. You're later than usual, Vera said, her tone neutral but her eyes searching. Range was busier today, Lily replied, setting her bag down by the steps. Vera studied her granddaughter, the careful stillness in Lily's shoulders, the faint tremor she tried to hide. She taught high school for decades. She knew when someone carried more than they said. Betty Murphy called, Vera said finally. Word travels fast. They say you made quite an impression out there. Lily unscrewed her water bottle, taking her time before answering. Made a long-distance shot, more attention than I wanted. How long? Lily hesitated, but there was no point dodging. 4,000 meters. Vera's cup froze halfway to her lips. Math and literature had been her subjects. She knew exactly what that meant. Lily Marie Jackson, she said, using the full name that was always reserved for serious moments. That's not a shot anyone makes by accident. Lily looked away, out at the darkening fields. Grandpa taught me steady hands. Your grandfather taught you to hunt rabbits. What you did today, that's training. And training comes with uniforms. The truth they'd avoided for 18 months finally hung between them. I served, Lily whispered. Army Rangers Recon 3 Tour. Vera closed her eyes. Pieces fell into place. The nightmares that woke her in the night, the way she always sat facing doors in restaurants, the silence she carried like armor. What happened over there? Vera asked softly. Lily's chest rose and fell, shallow, heavy. For a moment the images came back unbidden. Mountain villages, the weight of bodies carried to evac zones, the faces seen only through scopes. We lost good people, she said finally, and sometimes the shots weren't enough, and sometimes they were too much. Vera reached across the porch, taking her granddaughter's hand. And that's why you came home. Part of it, Lily said. But coming home doesn't change what I see when I close my eyes. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of everything they weren't saying. Then headlights swept across the yard, cutting through the fragile quiet. A car crunched up the drive. Not family, not neighbors. Visitors at this hour meant one thing, trouble. Susan Knight stepped out, editor of the Eagle's Rest Weekly Herald, her teenage daughter Brooke following reluctantly. Evening, Susan called, voice apologetic. Sorry to come late, but we need to talk. Vera gestured to the porch. Sit, coffee. Thank you, but we won't stay long, Susan said. She sat anyway, Brooke folding into the chair beside her, restless, embarrassed. By morning, Susan said bluntly, everyone will know about that shot, and people like Donovan Westfield won't ignore it. The name made Vera's jaw tighten. Westfield, the developer pushing hard to buy out properties, including theirs, for his grand riverside resort. What are you saying? Lily asked. I'm saying powerful people don't like surprises, Susan replied. They've been leaning on small ranchers because they thought we were just retirees and working families. But finding out one of those families has a ranger sniper in it, that changes things. Brooke leaned forward, her young face intense. It means you're a problem, and problems get managed. The word hung heavy. Lily felt the weight settle the way it always did before things turned. She had only wanted peace, but peace never stayed. That night she couldn't sleep. The old farmhouse creaked as the wind pushed against the windows. Shadows of the cottonwoods stretched across her ceiling, pulling her back to nights overseas when silence never meant safety. At 3 a.m. she gave up, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with a blank pad of paper. On one side of the ledger, peace, anonymity, healing. On the other, obligations, responsibility, a community that might need her. By dawn, she hadn't written a word. The back door creaked open. Juan Ramirez stepped in, his boots dusty, his face grim. Sorry to wake you, Miss Vera, Miss Lily, but we've got problems developing faster than expected. Lily set her mug down. What kind of problems? Juan took off his hat, rubbed his forehead. Tommy Mitchell overheard Rhodes at the tavern last night. He wasn't alone. 2 outsiders with him, asking questions about property values, sheriff response times, and about you. Me. They know you served. Knew enough to mention Afghanistan. Knew enough to mention confirmed kills. The kitchen went still. Vera's face paled. Lily felt the chill seep deeper into her bones. Military records weren't supposed to leak. If Westfield's people knew, they hadn't just guessed. They dug. They're treating this like a campaign, Lily said finally. Intelligence first, pressure second, escalation after. Juan nodded grimly. That's how it felt. The silence stretched. Outside, the sun broke across the frost, painting the fields gold. But in the kitchen, it felt like the beginning of a storm. By afternoon, Lily was sitting in the back room of the Copper Dollar Tavern, facing 6 veterans from the county. Carl Foster, Dr. Gray, old Pete Wilson. Others she knew only by sight, never by voice. Juan introduced her. This is Lily Jackson. I believe you all heard about yesterday's demonstration. Eyes turned, not with mockery, with measure, with recognition. One by one they shared their pasts. Korea, Somalia, Bosnia, Iraq, different wars, same scars. They knew what they were up against. Tommy recounted what he'd overheard. Questions about resistance, about backgrounds, about troublemakers. The room grew quiet. Dr. Gray leaned forward. That suggests they've already decided on escalation. Your shot didn't create the threat, Lily. It revealed it. So what do we do? Carl asked. Ideas flew, legal injunctions, media coverage, council pressure, but each fell short. Too slow, too weak. Finally, all eyes turned to Lily. She held their gaze steady, her voice low, certain. Then we organize like they do. Intelligence, security protocols, contingency planning. Old Pete frowned. That sounds like preparing for war. It is, Lily said softly. Maybe not with uniforms, but war nonetheless. They've declared what they want. The only question is whether we surrender or resist. The room went still. Veterans exchanged glances, the weight of recognition in their eyes. And in that moment, Lily realized something she had been trying to avoid since the day she came home. She wasn't done being a soldier. Not yet. Why was the sheriff's cruiser slowing in front of their ranch at dawn? The cold Montana morning still clung to the earth. breath visible in the air, frost stiff on the fence lines. Lily stood in the yard, axe in hand, splitting wood with the rhythm of someone who needed order more than warmth. The silence cracked when the sound of engines cut through the stillness. Two cruisers, one unmarked sedan, rolling down the gravel drive like wolves wearing badges. Her grandmother stepped onto the porch, robe pulled tight, coffee steaming in her hand. Her expression tightened. Visitors at this hour rarely brought good news. Lily wiped her hands on her flannel, jaw set. She didn't need to ask why they were here. She already knew. Her shot yesterday had reached ears it wasn't meant to. Deputy Russell stepped out first. A local, usually friendly, but today his eyes didn't quite meet hers. Behind him, two men in suits emerged, polished shoes crunching dirt like they didn't belong. One introduced himself as Agent Morrison, State Attorney General's office. His companion said nothing, just studied Lily with eyes that stripped details like they were evidence. "Miss Jackson," Morrison began, voice calm, practiced. "We're investigating a series of criminal incidents in Eagle's Rest. Vandalism, harassment, destruction of property. We've received reports you may have relevant information." Lily crossed her arms. "Information." "About your military background," Morrison clarified, too smooth. "About connections you may have with individuals skilled in surveillance, sabotage, intimidation tactics." The words landed like accusations dressed in politeness. Vera's voice cut through, sharp from years of teaching students not to waste her time. "Are you implying my granddaughter is responsible for local crimes because she served her country?" "Not implying," Morrison replied, "just following leads." Lily studied his face. Calm, unreadable, but she'd seen this before in villages overseas when officials asked questions not to learn but to intimidate. This wasn't about solving crimes. It was about pressure, about painting her as dangerous, unstable, a liability. Deputy Russell shifted uncomfortably, eyes betraying shame. He knew this wasn't justice, but his badge gave him no room to object. "Unless you have a warrant," Lily said evenly, "this conversation is over." Morrison gave a thin smile, like a man marking a name on a list. "We'll be in touch." The men left, tires crunching gravel. Silence returned, but not peace. Vera exhaled slowly, the mug trembling in her hand. "They're not just coming for the land, sweetheart. They're coming for you." Later that morning, news traveled faster than the wind. Brooke Knight, Susan's daughter, had been arrested, 16 years old. The charge: vandalism at the Riverside development site, spray-painted slogans, broken equipment. Lily heard it from Juan, who arrived in his old truck, face lined with anger. "They're framing her." Everyone at the tavern last night saw Brooke studying at the counter, clear as day. She wasn't anywhere near that site. The pattern was obvious. Target the vulnerable, apply pressure where it hurts, send a message. Lily felt her stomach knot. She had seen this tactic before, not in Montana but overseas. Detain the family of someone outspoken, accuse them of crimes, force silence through fear. By noon, more incidents stacked up. Carl Foster's hardware store broken into. Nothing stolen but his military display smashed, a note left behind. Troublemakers should reconsider. Dr. Gray's car windows shattered. Juan's fences cut. Tommy's landlord receiving anonymous complaints that brought inspectors to his property. A campaign, coordinated, efficient, ruthless. Lily stood by the barn, phone in hand, listening to each call, each report. It was unfolding exactly as she'd predicted at the veterans' meeting. Escalation, psychological warfare, and the speed of it chilled her. "They're trying to overwhelm us," she said aloud, mostly to herself. "Multiple fronts, no time to respond. Classic counterinsurgency, except we're the ones being treated like insurgents." Juan nodded grimly. "So what do we do?" Her answer came quicker than she expected. "We accelerate." That night the copper dollar's back room filled again. Veterans, ranchers, a handful of townsfolk brave enough to show up. Fear weighed heavy in the air, but so did resolve. Carl Foster slammed the vandalized plaque from his store onto the table. They're not even hiding anymore. Tommy recounted what his landlord had said. Old Pete described threats he remembered from the '70s mine disputes. Dr. Gray detailed the intimidation tactics with clinical clarity. And then all eyes turned to Lily. She had been quiet, hands folded, eyes shadowed by thought. But when she spoke, her words cut the air. They're not testing us anymore. They've moved to active operations, which means we're out of time. Out of time for what? Marcus Reed asked, still clinging to councilman instincts that hoped for compromise. For pretending this is just business. The silence was heavy. Some looked away. Others leaned in closer. They'll keep escalating, Lily continued, voice low, steady. Arrests, vandalism, intimidation. And when that doesn't work, worse. If they know my background, they know I'll recognize the pattern, which means they'll try to neutralize me first. Juan's jaw clenched. Over my dead body. Dr. Gray's gaze never left her. What do you propose? She hesitated. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with the weight of choice. Every word would pull her further into the role she had tried to leave behind. We organize fully this time. Intelligence teams, communication protocols, community patrols. If they're running this like a campaign, we counter it like one. Sounds like you're talking war, Carl said. Lily met his eyes. Call it what you want, but we either resist together or we watch them pick us off one by one. The room sat in silence. No one argued. They all knew she was right. And in that silence, Lily felt it again, that old familiar pull. Leadership she never asked for. Responsibility she never wanted. Her chest tightened. She thought of Afghanistan, of the weight of soldiers' trust, of the faces she couldn't save. And yet, here she was again, standing at the edge of the same cliff. Maybe she hadn't escaped. Maybe she was never meant to. Back at the ranch, night wrapped around the house. Vera sat knitting in her chair, her hands steady even when her eyes weren't. How did the meeting go? She asked. Lily set her bag down, her voice quiet. Like stepping back into uniform, different enemy, same fight. Vera studied her granddaughter. And are you prepared for what that might mean? Lily looked out the window. The land stretched silent, the fields silver in moonlight. It should have felt like sanctuary. But now all she saw were angles of approach, cover, concealment, firing positions. Her voice was soft when it came. I don't know, but I don't think I have a choice anymore. Sleep didn't come. At 2 a.m., headlights swept across the driveway again. This time not cruisers, trucks, engines low, deliberate. Lily slipped from her bed, bare feet silent on the floor. She moved like a shadow to the window. Out front, figures stepped from the vehicles, silhouettes in the moonlight. Not deputies, not neighbors, strangers. Her stomach turned cold. They weren't here to talk. Why did they come in the dead of night, when silence makes fear feel louder? The moon hung thin over the fields, clouds dragging shadows across the frost. Lily's breath slowed as she crouched by the window, watching strangers spill from trucks that didn't belong on this road. 3 men, heavy jackets. One carried something metallic that caught the pale light, not a rifle but a crowbar, tools of intimidation. They thought this was just another farmhouse. Vera's voice whispered behind her, barely a breath. How many? 3, maybe more waiting in the trucks, Lily murmured back. Stay inside. But her grandmother didn't move. 65 years hadn't dulled her defiance. This is our land, our home. I know, that's why I need you safe. Lily's hands moved without thought. She pulled her grandfather's rifle from the case by the door, the stock worn smooth by decades of use. No scope, just iron sights. She checked the chamber, then slid onto the porch as quietly as a shadow. The cold air bit her lungs. Gravel crunched under unfamiliar boots. The men whispered, pointing at the barn, at the tractors, at the house itself like property they already owned. Lily stepped into the yard. Her voice carried steady, calm, dangerous in its quiet. "You're trespassing." The men froze. One turned, smirk stretching in the dark. "Evening, ma'am, just looking for the county line. Roads out here all look the same." The lie was lazy. "You passed the sign 2 miles back," Lily said. The rifle rested easy in her hands, not raised but present. "Turn your trucks around, now." The leader's smirk faltered, replaced with calculation. "No need for hostility. We're just curious folks." Behind him, one muttered, "She's the sniper." The word cut the air. Her gut tightened. So it wasn't random. They'd come for her. The leader's eyes narrowed, measuring her. "Lady, you should reconsider the company you're keeping. A lot of folks here don't want trouble, don't need heroes stirring it up." Her jaw clenched. The same words she'd heard overseas, from officials who sold out villages piece by piece. "I'll say this once," she replied, "leave." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the leader chuckled, low and mocking. "You think one rifle scares us? We've handled worse." He took a step forward. The crack of Lily's shot shattered the night. The bullet struck gravel inches from his boot, spraying dust. Not a kill shot, a message. The smirk vanished. Silence pressed heavy. "You won't get a second warning," she said. Her voice didn't rise, it didn't need to. The men backed away, muttering curses, anger laced with fear. They climbed into their trucks, engines roaring as tires spit gravel into the night. When the silence returned, it wasn't peace. It was the fragile quiet that follows a storm's first strike. Vera stepped onto the porch, her face pale but proud. "You didn't kill them." "They weren't here to die," Lily said. Her hands shook now, only now when the danger was gone. "They were here to measure us, and now they know I'm willing to stand." Vera placed a hand on her granddaughter's shoulder, "And that changes everything." By morning, word of the standoff had already spread. Not through newspapers or official channels, but through whispers, texts, backroom conversations. At the Copper Dollar, the veterans gathered again, faces tight, voices low. Carl Foster leaned forward, voice gravelly. "They came onto your land at night." "They wanted to scare us," Lily said. "Instead, they walked away knowing we won't fold." "That makes you target number one," Dr. Gray said. He tapped a finger on the table, measured, precise. "Which means we plan accordingly." "What's the play?" Juan asked. Lily hesitated. Her heart pounded. Every plan she voiced would drag her deeper back into the life she thought she'd left. But silence wasn't an option anymore. "They'll escalate again," she said finally. "Probably in daylight, somewhere public, to control the story. They'll paint us as aggressors, dangerous radicals standing in the way of progress. If they can discredit me, the rest of you fall easier." Carl spat on the floor. "They'll try to make you the villain." "They already are," Lily replied softly. The room was quiet. Every man there had seen this playbook before, in war zones, in politics, in corporations that bled towns dry. None of it was new, but it was new here in their quiet Montana valley. "So what do we do?" Tommy asked. "We stay ahead," Lily answered. "Document everything, protect each other. Never let them control the narrative without proof." Dr. Gray nodded. "Truth is our strongest weapon, but truth alone won't keep trucks off your land at night." "No," Lily admitted. "That's why we prepare for both." The room sat with the weight of her words. Plans were made, watches assigned, quiet promises spoken. And Lily felt the old weight settle on her shoulders again, the burden of leadership. She hadn't asked for it, but it had found her anyway. That afternoon, while tending to the horses, her phone buzzed. A message from Susan Knight: "Need to meet. Urgent. Riverside office. Bring no one." It smelled like bait. But ignoring it wasn't an option. She drove into town, parking 3 blocks away, approaching the Riverside Development office on foot. The glass front building stood sterile and bright against the small town street, its logo polished, its lobby too clean. Inside, Susan waited, packing nervously. Her daughter Brooke sat stiff in a chair, arms crossed, eyes wary. "What's this about?" Lily asked. Susan glanced around, voice hushed. "They approached me this morning, Westfield's people, said if I stop printing stories about the ranchers, about the intimidation, they'll drop the charges against Brooke. Said they'll even sponsor the paper, new equipment, advertising, everything we've been struggling for." Her hands trembled. "Lily, they're buying me off. And part of me wanted to say yes, for Brooke, for survival. But if I do, I betray everyone else." Lily's chest tightened. She understood too well the impossible choices: survival versus principle, family versus community. "You already know your answer," Lily said gently. Susan's eyes filled. "I can't fight them like you can. I don't have your training, your strength." "No," Lily replied, her voice soft but firm. "But you have something I don't. You have the truth, and a way to spread it. That matters more than a rifle ever will." Brooke's voice cracked through, raw and defiant. "They'll come after us harder." "They will," Lily admitted, "but you won't face them alone." For the first time, Brooke's eyes softened. Not fully, but enough. That night, as Lily drove back, snow began to fall. Thin flakes scattered, the kind that whisper of harder storms coming. The ranch lights glowed warm ahead, but her chest felt heavy. Each mile carried her deeper into something she had sworn she was finished with: conflict, command, sacrifice. She pulled into the drive, headlights sweeping across the fields. For a moment she thought she saw movement by the far fence, a shadow. Then it was gone. She cut the engine, sat in the silence. The snow tapped lightly on the windshield, delicate, almost beautiful. And she wondered, not for the first time, whether strength was a gift or a curse. Because every time she chose to stand, it seemed the world demanded more. Why was the town square so quiet when she walked in, as if every conversation had paused for her arrival? Saturday mornings in Eagles Rest usually buzzed with normalcy: farmers unloading crates, kids tugging at parents' sleeves for pastries, old-timers sipping coffee at the corner cafe. But today, when Lily stepped out of her truck, the rhythm faltered. Eyes followed her. Whispers chased her. She'd grown used to stares since the shot, admiration from some, unease from others. But this silence carried something heavier, a suspicion seeded, a story already told before she'd had a chance to speak. At the cafe window, a television played the local news, and there it was, her name, her face. Breaking: violence erupts at Riverside Development Site. Alleged involvement of former Army Ranger Lily Jackson under investigation. The footage rolled, shaky cell phone video of broken windows at the Riverside office, a spray-painted slogan: "Land is life, not for sale." Grainy figures moved in the background, indistinct, but the narration didn't hesitate to fill in blanks. Eyewitnesses claim Jackson was seen near the site shortly before the damage occurred. Authorities have not confirmed charges, but sources indicate an investigation is underway. The screen cut to Morrison, the same state agent who had stood in her yard days earlier. His tone was calm, reasonable, the practiced voice of authority. "We're not accusing anyone at this time," he said, "but we are concerned about the escalation of militant activity in Eagles Rest, and we urge citizens to remain cautious." Militant. The word stung deeper than she expected. She hadn't even realized she was gripping the door handle until Vera's voice pulled her back. Her grandmother stood behind her, coat pulled tight, face hard. "Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you rattled." "I wasn't there," Lily said through clenched teeth. "I know," Vera replied, "but truth and narrative aren't the same thing. They're telling the story they want, and right now, you're the villain in it." Inside the cafe, conversations hushed further when she walked in. Pete Garrison gave her a nod from his corner table, quiet solidarity. Susan Knight sat near the back, notebook open, face pale but determined. Juan rose from his seat, stepping to her side without hesitation, a shield in denim and boots. But not everyone welcomed her. Derek Manning sat near the window, the same arrogance still clinging to him, though thinner now, worn by fear and humiliation. His father, Robert Manning, local banker, big donor to Westfield's project, leaned in close, whispering loud enough for all to hear. "Some people don't belong in a decent town," Robert muttered. "Soldiers should stay in their wars." Derek smirked. "She's dangerous, everyone knows it now." Lily stopped at their table. Her voice was low, even. "Say what you want about me, but leave this town out of it. They've carried enough." Robert's eyes glinted, smug. "The town is in it, Miss Jackson, because of you." The cafe felt like a tinderbox. One spark and everything would ignite. But Lily turned away, choosing silence over fire. She sat beside Susan, Juan taking the chair across from them. "They staged it," Susan whispered fiercely, leaning in. "I've already confirmed 3 witnesses placing you at the Knight house last night when the vandalism happened. You weren't anywhere near Riverside." "Doesn't matter," Lily said quietly. "They've planted the seed, that's all they need." Susan's pen trembled in her hand. "Then we fight back with truth, articles, documentation, statements from witnesses. We make it impossible for them to control the narrative." Lily shook her head. "They don't care about truth, they care about perception, and perception is faster." Juan slammed a hand on the table, voice rough. "So what? We just let them smear her. Let them paint her as some kind of terrorist." "No," Lily said, her eyes hardened. "We fight, but not the way they expect." That afternoon, Lily drove to the town council meeting. Word had spread that Westfield himself would attend. Not his lawyers, not his men, but the man with the money. The man behind all of it. The council chamber was packed. Farmers, shopkeepers, ranchers, workers, some hopeful for promises of jobs, others fearful of what would be lost. Westfield stood at the podium, tailored suit immaculate, smile rehearsed. His voice carried with the ease of a man used to rooms bending to him. "My friends," he began, "I understand your concerns. Change is never easy, but Riverside will bring prosperity, jobs, infrastructure, opportunities this valley hasn't seen in decades." Applause broke from part of the room. Others stayed quiet, arms crossed, wary. Then his tone shifted, careful but sharp. "Unfortunately, there are those who oppose progress, who would rather see Eagle's Rest stagnate than thrive. And some, I regret to say, are resorting to violence." He gestured subtly toward the back, toward Lily. Heads turned, eyes followed. Acts of vandalism, intimidation, individuals with dangerous military backgrounds who threaten stability. Gasps rippled, murmurs spread. The seed of fear watered again. Lily rose, her voice cut clean through the noise. "Say it plainly, Westfield, you mean me." The room fell silent. Westfield's smile didn't falter, "If the shoe fits." Her jaw tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "I fought for this country. I buried friends in foreign soil so people like you could stand at podiums and promise prosperity you don't intend to deliver. Don't twist my service into your weapon." The tension crackled. Westfield leaned forward, tone smooth as glass. "And yet, Miss Jackson, the evidence places you at the center of unrest. The people here deserve safety, not shadows of war haunting their streets." For a moment she saw what he was doing with chilling clarity. He wasn't just smearing her. He was offering the town a choice, side with progress or side with danger. And danger had her face. She took a slow breath, then spoke not to him but to the room. "You all know me," she said. "I grew up in these hills. I've fed cattle in your fields, fixed fences with your fathers, shared meals in your kitchens. I didn't come home to make war. I came home to heal. But healing doesn't mean silence. If standing for this land makes me dangerous, then maybe danger is what's needed." The room held its breath, Some nodded, some looked away, but something shifted. Westfield's smile thinned. He wasn't used to being challenged. Not here, not by someone whose strength wasn't bought. After the meeting, Lily stepped into the cold night air, her heart pounding. Juan was at her side, steady. Susan caught up, notebook in hand, eyes alight with determination. "You turned the tide," Susan said. "Not everyone, but enough. They saw you, not the caricature he tried to paint." "Doesn't mean they won't keep trying," Lily muttered. "No," Susan agreed, "but you gave them something else to believe." A sound cut through the night, glass shattering. They turned. Her truck parked on the street had its windows smashed. Spray paint scrawled across the side. "Sniper equals killer." Gasps rose from townsfolk spilling out of the hall. Some shook their heads. Some whispered. A few pulled out phones to record. Lily stood still, staring at the red letters dripping down metal. Westfield walked past, hands in his pockets, voice low enough only she could hear. "Perception is reality, Miss Jackson, and reality is mine to shape." He didn't wait for a reply. He didn't need one. That night back at the ranch, Lily sat at the kitchen table. The word killer burned into her memory. Vera poured coffee, her hands steady, her voice calm. "They'll never stop, Lily, not until they break you." Lily stared at the mug, her reflection warped in the surface. "They can smear me, they can come for me, but when they start coming for everyone else, that's when I stop holding back." Her voice was low, resolute. And in the silence that followed, Vera understood. The girl who had come home broken was gone. In her place stood the soldier again, unwilling, reluctant, but awake. Why did betrayal always come dressed in familiar faces? Snow lay heavy on the valley, muffling sound, turning fences and barns into pale silhouettes. Lily had spent the morning repairing a broken gate with Juan, their breath clouding in the air, hands numb inside worn gloves. The rhythm of work steadied her, until the call came. Susan Knight's voice trembled through the phone. "Lily, they printed it in the Gazette, a full-page spread." "What spread?" Lily asked, though her stomach already tightened with dread. The headline reads, "Sniper turns on small town. They've twisted everything. Called you unstable. Said you're training veterans for violence. That you're turning Eagle's Rest into a militia." The words landed heavy. She glanced at Juan. His jaw was clenched, eyes dark. He didn't need to hear the rest to know. By noon, copies of the paper lay scattered across diners, barbershops, feed stores. The article quoted anonymous sources claiming Lily had been dishonorably discharged, a lie. It described her as volatile, prone to anger, unable to adjust after war. It painted her as a threat to the very community she'd bled to defend. At the hardware store, Carl Foster slammed the paper onto the counter, his voice shaking with rage. "This is slander. Everyone who knows her knows better." But not everyone did know her, and that was the danger. At the school, Brooke Knight overheard teachers whispering in the lounge. At the post office, Vera heard neighbors murmur words like unstable and dangerous. At the tavern, Derek Manning held court, waving the paper like proof of what he'd always wanted to believe. By dusk, the betrayal had a face. Sheriff Caldwell himself knocked on the ranch door. He stood awkwardly on the porch, hat in hand, eyes weary. "Lily, you know I don't buy all this, but I've got orders from the state. They want you questioned, formally." "Question for what?" she asked flatly. "Inciting unrest, conspiracy to intimidate public officials, destruction of property. False charges, paper shields for real threats." "I'm not leaving this ranch in handcuffs," Lily said. Caldwell sighed. "I figured you'd say that. Just keep your head down. You've got more enemies than you can count." He left, tires crunching away into the dark. Vera closed the door, her face pale. "They're not just after your reputation anymore. They're building a case." "Not a case," Lily murmured. "A cage." That night the veterans met again at the Copper Dollar. The mood was darker, harder. Carl slammed his fist on the table. We can't let them control the story. If they turn the town against Lily, they turn the town against all of us. Tommy looked nervous. But people believe what they read. You know how it goes. Once the word militia gets thrown around, nobody listens to facts. Then we give them something they can't ignore, Juan said fiercely. Lily sat quiet, listening, her hands folded. She felt their eyes on her, waiting for leadership she hadn't asked for. Finally she spoke. We need to accept reality. They're not stopping. Every time we push back, they escalate. We've tried truth. We've tried reason. But Westfield doesn't deal in truth. He deals in perception. And he's winning that war. Then what's left? Carl demanded. Her voice was low. Preparation, contingency. We protect our families, our land, each other. If they try to break us with lies, we endure. If they try to break us with force, she hesitated, then let the words come. We stand. The room went still. Each man weighed her words against the risks. They all knew what she meant. Dr. Gray leaned forward. His voice was quiet, steady. And you'll lead. Lily's chest tightened. Images flooded her: Afghanistan, the weight of command, the faces of those who hadn't come home. She had promised herself never again. But promises break under pressure. She met his gaze. If it comes to that, yes. The decision landed heavy, final. 2 nights later, the storm hit harder. Not weather, not wind, but fire. Lily woke to the sound of sirens in the distance. She pulled on her boots, stepped into the snow-covered yard. The orange glow lit the horizon. A barn, Carl's. By the time she and Juan arrived, flames clawed at the night sky. Firefighters worked desperately. Neighbors formed bucket lines, but the barn was gone. Carl stood in the snow, face streaked with ash and fury. On the ground nearby, a canister, still warm, a chemical accelerant, deliberate. This wasn't an accident, Carl growled, his voice cracked. They came for me, for everything I built. And scrawled in black across the surviving fence, resist and burn. Lily's fists clenched. Her heart pounded with a fury she hadn't let herself feel in years. This is the line, she said. They crossed it. They're not trying to scare us anymore. They're trying to break us. Carl's voice shook. Then they'll learn some things don't burn so easy. Back at the ranch, Vera sat Lily down at the kitchen table, the firelight flickering across her lined face. You've been carrying this alone, Vera said softly, but you can't carry it all, not again. I don't have a choice, Lily whispered. You do, you always do, but choice comes with cost. You've paid enough already. Lily's throat tightened. Grandma, if I stand down, they win. They take this land, this valley, this town. If I fight, maybe they destroy me. But maybe, just maybe, they don't take everything. Vera reached across the table, took her hand. Then fight with dignity. Don't let them make you what they say you are. Lily held her grandmother's hand tight, eyes burning. She wanted to believe dignity could win. But in her gut, she knew men like Westfield only understood force. And she feared what that truth would make her become. The next morning, the betrayal cut deeper. Susan burst into the ranch kitchen, face pale, voice breaking. They've turned one of ours, Tommy. He's working with them. The words hit like a blow. What do you mean? Juan demanded. He met with Westfield's men last night. I have photos. He gave them names, locations, patrol schedules, everything. Silence, the kind that crushes. Lily closed her eyes. Betrayal, familiar, expected, but still it hurt. Why? Juan whispered. Debt, Susan said bitterly. They bought him off, promised to clear it, promised protection. Carl's voice was rough. He's as good as dead to us. No, Lily said sharply. That's what they want, to fracture us, to turn us on each other. If we start tearing ourselves apart, we've already lost. But inside, her chest ached. She had trusted Tommy, trusted his quiet loyalty, and now his betrayal put them all at risk. That night, Lily stood alone in the field, snow crunching under her boots, stars sharp in the cold sky. She stared out at the mountains, their peaks etched in moonlight. Her breath was slow, controlled, her heart heavy. She whispered to the night, to ghosts only she could hear, "I didn't want this, I just wanted to come home." The silence answered, the same silence that had followed her across oceans, across deserts, across graves. But then she heard another voice, not ghost, not memory. Her grandmother's, carried from the porch. Home isn't given, Lily, it's defended. Sometimes softly, sometimes with fire, but always with love. Lily turned. Vera stood there, wrapped in her old coat, eyes fierce. And Lily understood. This fight wasn't about land, or reputation, or even survival, it was about love. Love for a place, for people, for dignity. And love, she realized, could be fiercer than any rifle. Why did the town feel like it was holding its breath? Snow had hardened into ice along Main Street, crunching under boots, cracking under tires. Shops stayed open, but curtains twitched when strangers passed. People spoke in whispers, glanced over shoulders. Eagle's Rest had always been small, but now it felt smaller, boxed in, watched. Lily felt it in every step. At the grocery store, eyes slid away when she entered. At the feed supply, conversations hushed mid-sentence. The Gazette headline had done its work. She was no longer just the quiet girl who shocked everyone at the range. She was a problem, a shadow, a name too heavy to speak. She loaded supplies into her truck in silence. Flour, salt, canned goods, nothing flashy but enough to last. She felt the eyes of two men in a black SUV parked across the lot. No logo, no plates, just presence. Watching. She closed the tailgate and met their gaze. They didn't flinch. They didn't hide. They wanted her to know. Back at the ranch, the veterans gathered again, faces drawn with fatigue. Carl Foster had fresh bruises from an accident that sent his truck into a ditch. Juan Ramirez found his cattle spooked by flares tossed into the pasture at night. Susan's printing press had been seized for code violations. "They're tightening the screws," Dr. Gray said, his voice calm but grim. "Classic attrition, death by 1,000 cuts." Carl slammed a fist on the table. "We've taken enough cuts." Lily leaned forward, voice steady. "Which means they're close to making their move. They want us isolated, weakened, divided. When the final push comes, they'll expect us broken." "And we won't be?" Juan asked. Her eyes met his. "Not if we prepare." The room went quiet. They all knew what that meant now. This wasn't just strategy or meetings. This was readiness. Weapons cleaned, patrols doubled, watches kept through the night. It wasn't war, not yet, but it smelled close. That evening, Vera sat across from Lily at the kitchen table, knitting untouched in her lap. Her eyes searched her granddaughter's face. "You're slipping back into it," Vera said softly. "Into what?" "Into the soldier you were, the one who never smiled, the one who carried everything alone." Lily looked away, jaw tight. "I don't have a choice. If I don't carry it, no one else will." "That's the same lie you told yourself over there," Vera replied, "and it nearly killed you." Silence stretched. The wind howled against the windows. Finally, Vera's voice softened. "Just promise me one thing. When the time comes, don't forget who you are. Not just a soldier, not just a sniper. You're Lily, my Lily. Don't let them take that too." Lily swallowed hard, eyes burning. She wanted to promise, but promises had weight, and she wasn't sure she could keep this one. 2 days later, the confrontation came in broad daylight. The town council convened again, but this time the air was different. More deputies at the door, more suits in the back, and at the front, Westfield himself, smiling like a man who already owned the outcome. He wasted no time. "My friends," he began smoothly, "the time for patience is over. Eagle's Rest deserves safety, stability, prosperity. But a small group of radicals continues to resist. Their actions endanger not just themselves, but all of you." He let the words hang. Then, with deliberate weight, he spoke her name. "Lily Jackson." The room shifted. Some gasped, some nodded, some stayed very still. She is not who she pretends to be, Westfield continued. She hides behind service to justify violence. She recruits others into her cause. And last night, he held up photographs, grainy and staged men in masks, Molotovs in hand, blurred but posed to suggest familiarity. Last night, our security team intercepted radicals preparing to burn another property. Among them, witnesses claim was Jackson. Lies manufactured but effective. Lily rose slowly from her seat, every eye on her. I wasn't there, she said, voice clear, steady. I was home with my grandmother, and you all know it. These photos are staged. This narrative is false. But ask yourselves this: why does Westfield need to smear me if his vision is truly so strong? A murmur rippled, doubt, small but present. Westfield's smile tightened. You see, ladies and gentlemen, how quickly she deflects, how smoothly she denies. That is training, that is manipulation. He turned, gesturing toward the deputies. And that is why, tonight, I ask the council to authorize a formal request for state assistance in removing this threat. The word remove hung heavy. The council shifted uneasily. Some whispered, some nodded, and Lily understood Westfield had nearly won. She didn't speak again. She didn't argue. She simply looked at the room, at neighbors she'd known since childhood, at shopkeepers and farmers, at men and women who had once trusted her. Some still did, but some no longer could. And that, she realized, was his true weapon: division. That night back at the ranch, headlights swept across the yard again. But this time it wasn't strangers, it was allies, trucks pulling in one after another. Carl, Juan, Dr. Gray, Susan, even Brooke, fierce despite her youth. They filed into the barn, their faces lit by lanterns, their eyes resolute. Carl spoke first. They're moving against you, Lily, against all of us. If the council folds, they'll send in state police. Maybe worse. We need to be ready. Juan laid a rifle on the table. I've been ready since the night they came to your porch. Susan spread papers, witness statements, photos, articles she hadn't yet dared to publish. I'll fight with words, but if they come with force, words won't stop them. Brooke's young voice cracked through, raw with determination. They're scared of you, Lily. That's why they're trying so hard to break you. If you give up now, they win. If you stand, maybe we all stand. The barn went quiet. Everyone waited. Lily looked at each of them, faces weathered by life, hands calloused by work, eyes carrying scars of their own. None of them had asked for this fight, but here they were, ready to stand anyway. Her chest ached. She felt the soldier rising inside her again, the part of her she'd tried to bury, but now it was needed. She drew a slow breath. Her voice was soft, but it carried. Then we prepare, quietly, carefully, not to provoke but to endure. If they come for us, we'll be ready. No cheers, no applause, just nods, quiet resolve. And in that silence, something shifted. They weren't just individuals anymore. They were a line. Later, alone in her room, Lily sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the brass casing she kept in her pocket, the one from the 4,000-meter shot. She turned it between her fingers, its weight familiar, its meaning heavier now. She whispered to herself, to the darkness, "Don't let them make you what they say you are." But she knew, when dawn came, she might not have a choice. Because sometime, survival demanded becoming the very thing others feared. Why does the final moment always feel quiet, even when the storm is about to break? The valley lay frozen under a hard sky. Snow covered the fields in silence, hiding scars of tire tracks, broken fences, and burned barns. At dawn, the frost glistened on every wire, every post, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Lily stood by the window, mug of coffee warming her hands, eyes fixed on the horizon. She could feel it, the weight of something coming, a rhythm she recognized from war zones, that stillness before violence. Her grandmother came up behind her, wrapped in her old robe, hands steady even as her eyes were tired. You don't have to carry all of it, Lily. Lily didn't turn. Her voice was low. I can't ask anyone else to carry what I already know is mine. Vera placed a hand on her shoulder. It isn't about asking, it's about trusting. Before Lily could answer, the sound came, engines, heavy, deliberate, tires crunching frozen gravel. She set her mug down and stepped out onto the porch. Trucks, four, black, windows tinted, engines idling low like growls. Deputies' cruisers followed, lights flashing, sirens silent. Westfield had come to end it. The truck stopped in the yard. Doors opened. Men spilled out, suits, security contractors, deputies. At the center, Donovan Westfield stepped down in his long coat, smile as cold as the snow. "Good morning, Miss Jackson," he called, his voice smooth, carrying across the yard like a man addressing an audience, not an adversary. "It's time we settled this." Lily's hand stayed loose at her sides, though every nerve screamed for readiness. "You've already settled it, with fire, with lies, with fear." Westfield chuckled, shaking his head. "You're still thinking too small. This isn't about you or your ranch or even this town. This valley is mine by right of vision. You're just in the way." Behind her, the barn doors opened. Juan stepped out, rifle slung but not raised. Carl followed, his face grim. Dr. Gray, Susan, Brooke. One by one they appeared, not soldiers, not militants, just people refusing to hide. Westfield's smile flickered, but only for a second. "How noble, but misguided. You think your little band of veterans and ranchers can outlast me. I own the council, the state, the story." "Stories don't last forever," Lily said softly. "Truth does." He took a step closer, voice dropping. "Truth is whatever people believe, and right now they believe you're dangerous." The deputies shifted, hands hovering near holsters. His security men adjusted their coats. The air thickened with the weight of choice. Vera stepped onto the porch, her voice calm but cutting. "You can smear her name, Donovan. You can paint her as a villain, but you'll never own her dignity, and you'll never own this land." The words carried more weight than Westfield expected. His jaw tightened. He gave a small nod, and with that everything broke. The first man reached for his weapon. Lily moved faster, not to fire, not to kill, but to plant herself between her people and the threat. Her voice rang out, sharp, commanding, the voice of a ranger who had led men through worse. "Don't." The word cut through the yard. The deputies froze, some because they feared her, others because part of them still respected her. For a moment the standoff teetered. Then one of Westfield's men raised his rifle. The crack of a shot split the cold air. Wood splintered from the barn beam inches from Carl's head. Shouts erupted. Weapons rose. For a heartbeat, the yard was chaos. Lily dropped to one knee, rifle braced, eyes steady. She didn't fire, not yet. Her voice cut through again. "Think about what you're doing. This isn't war. This is home, your home." Her words landed. Deputies faltered, exchanging glances. Security men shifted uneasily. Not everyone here wanted blood on snow. Westfield's voice roared, sharp with frustration. "Arrest her. Arrest all of them." But no one moved. Carl's voice thundered back. "You want blood, you take it yourself." Westfield's face twisted. He stepped forward, spittle freezing in the cold air. "You think this ends with you? You're nothing. A broken soldier. A scared girl with a rifle. I'll bury your name before I ever bury your body." Lily rose slowly, rifle loose in her hands. She met his eyes, calm, unflinching. "You already lost, Westfield, because you thought fear was stronger than love." The silence that followed was deeper than any shout. The deputies lowered their hands first. One by one, weapons shifted down. Security men looked at each other, uneasy, unwilling to bleed for someone else's ambition. Westfield stood alone, breath steaming in the cold. His empire of fear cracked in front of him. Susan stepped forward, phone raised, recording every second. "Say hello to the truth, Donovan. The whole valley will see this." For the first time, Westfield's smile broke. He turned, fury tight in his movements, climbed into his truck and slammed the door. Engines roared. The convoy pulled away, leaving churned snow and silence behind. The yard stayed still long after the trucks disappeared. The veterans lowered rifles. Susan lowered her phone. Brooke let out a breath she'd been holding too long. Carl muttered, voice rough, "That man'll be back, one way or another." "Maybe," Lily said. She slung her rifle, eyes still fixed on the horizon. "But next time he won't find us unprepared, and next time maybe he won't find us afraid." Juan clapped her shoulder firm. "You stood when it mattered. That's all anyone can ask." But Lily's chest was heavy. Standing came with weight, and weight never left. That night the house was quiet. Snow tapped the windows. Vera sat by the fire, knitting, finally moving again, her hands steady. Lily sat across from her, staring at the brass casing she still carried in her pocket, the one from the impossible shot. She turned it between her fingers, its edges worn smooth. Her grandmother's voice was soft. "You didn't fire tonight." "I almost did." "But you didn't, that matters." Lily stared into the fire, eyes reflecting the flames. "Sometimes I wonder if restraint is strength or just fear." Vera's knitting needles clicked softly. "Restraint is love, Lily, and love is the only strength that lasts." The words sank deep. Lily closed her hand around the casing. For the first time in months, her breath came easier. Not because the fight was over, it was, but because she had chosen how to fight. Not with vengeance, not with rage, but with dignity. And in that choice, she found something like peace. The valley slept under snow. The fields were quiet again. But in that quiet, something lingered, not fear, not submission, but resilience. Because sometimes strength doesn't shout. Sometimes it doesn't threaten. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.